Hey, I'm Stephanie Fager, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and will buy it. Today, I'm sharing with you a way I get empowered, and it's through reading. Since I learned how to read, I could always be found with a book in my hands. And as I've grown, that's remained the same. Books build bridges, not walls. In fact, I've seen books break them down. They invite you into a new way of thinking. They whisk you into make-believe. They spark imagination. They challenge you. They are doors to new opportunities. Books are powerful, and I believe that they hold power both through writing them and reading them. During this pop-up episode, I'm going to prove to you just that, as I share my favorite insights from a recent book I've read and how it might push you, my author friend, to become empowered. Are you ready? This is the Empowered Author Podcast. I love books that challenge me to be better, to do more, to leave a legacy. And recently, an author that I've had the chance to work closely with for several years published his third book. Robin T. Jennings is an amazing man and a retired clergyman in the Episcopal Church. He has leveraged writing books as a tool to spread a message that means a lot to him, and one that could leave a legacy and really make the world a better place in the process. I had the opportunity to chat with Robin recently about his book and its messages, as well as the 3 key messages and takeaways I felt left me with a deeper reflection. Let me invite you into that conversation. Welcome to the Empowered Author Podcast.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's great to see you.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Robin and I have had a lot of fun learning the virtual world of getting to work together. And this has always been something, Robin, on my to-do list to have you be a part of the Empowered Author Podcast for lots of reasons. But one is because I love every time we chat, you go, Stephanie, you've empowered me. You have empowered me.
And leveraged and all the other aspects of your work have been really, really helpful. So I thank you for this invitation. I'm glad I can give something back. Absolutely.
Well, you're giving a lot back in your books. I've had the pleasure to be a part of all 3 of them with you, and they are really positioned and poised to make a difference in the lives of so many people. So on behalf of the people who read them, thank you for using your talents in this way, because it really makes a meaningful difference. And this newest book, Robin, I love all your books, but this one's really awesome. And it left me really reflecting on, several ways that I think all of us can be charged in making a difference in the lives of other people. And when I think back on authors specifically, especially nonfiction authors, I really believe at the heart of why we write meaningful nonfiction books comes down to the fact that, we want to make a difference in the life of another person. Right. And the heart of your third book is really the focus of making that difference through mentorship. So I know we're dancing around the topic, but I'd love, before we dive into kind of my 3 favorite takeaways, for you to give our listeners today a little synopsis on the book, the title, and why you wrote it.
Well, let's start with the title. That's the easy part. The title is A Letter to the Church, and then it's also to the next generation. Letter to the Church and the next generation. And I've bridged the 2 because the 2 need to be bridged. I think you've talked to me before about the disconnect. And certainly with generational gaps, that is a real issue. The letter to the church, I'm using the letter of James. And if you've read the letter of James, or your listeners have read James, I call it's like a little hand grenade going down the center of the aisle of the church. It just blows up. It's pretty strong, his letter. And yet I can say more about that if you'd like to talk about his letter. But I use simply his introduction, his first chapter, because it highlights many of the concepts that run throughout the letter. The letter's short, 6 chapters. It's not a long read, but boy, it's powerful and hits you right in the heart.
Okay, so hold on. You just said something, Robin, I want to elaborate on, because it's a short chapter, or it's a short book in the Bible. It's not this massive book. And this is proof that crazy, amazing things can come in small packages, and when you're thinking about writing, other people are thinking about that might be listening to this of writing a book. You don't have to think of a 100,000 word book, right? Like this short 6 chapters of the Bible, like can be game changing and really positions us with a challenge and a charge on how to like leave a legacy.
And quite honestly, I mean, not honestly, you'll see it. I use the first chapter as a framework for the book, 12 chapters, so that's James. One word just sent me off flying. I mean, and that's James as well, because he talks about doing the word. And that obviously the word is Jesus. It's Logos. In the beginning was the word, and the word was flesh, became flesh, that from John. But I'm saying all this only because when reading James, the word becomes flesh in Jesus, but also James is that living link. People question, who is James? And there's a lot of scholarship debate about that. But what I refer to James is the living link. And what brought that about was, interestingly enough, and maybe I'm getting off subject here, but it was back in the early 2000s, 2003, they found an ossuary in Israel in a burial spot. The ossuary was really in the same period of time of that first century. And it had the name of James and brother of Jesus and father and son of Joseph, right there on the little ossuary box. And an ossuary is a collection of the bones. And all of this led to great wild speculation among scholars. But the gist of it, and by the way, then there were all kinds of trials and forgery claims and all this sort of thing. Right. And so that's where it all ended up. But the gist of it is it really rekindled the character of James. Who is this guy? And with that said, and I shouldn't say guy, but he probably was the first bishop of Jerusalem. He was the leader of the early church. He witnessed the resurrection. I could go on and on. Brother of Jesus, or at least a living link to the family. Stepbrother, cousin, there's all kinds of theories. But the point is, when reading James in his letter, people will say, he doesn't say that much about Jesus. Jesus is throughout every word, not even buried in the phrases he uses. A lot of the Beatitudes, he refers to the Sermon on the Mount. It's like we're listening to an eyewitness. And it's just very exciting, as you can tell, just by the passion I have for it still.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the cool part of this particular book, because you can feel that passion that you have in every word that you write. And it really leaves readers with a challenge and a charge. And I think as I was contemplating in what I'm reading, this episode of what I'm reading in the Empowered Author podcast, the 3 key takeaways, I walked away from that and was inspired through your passion with the biblical guidance in 3 ways. And so I would love, Robin, to dive in a little bit on each of those and how it's just proof that whether it is a book that is crazy long, a book that's short, whether it's a book that's full of all of your own thoughts or interpretations of the oldest book on the freaking planet, and extrapolating really awesome stuff from that. Like, there is so much value, and we can take from that and do something with it. And so one of the key takeaways that I am going to forever remember and use in my life, and I think is really relevant to our listeners today, is this focus of connection. And this chapter or this letter in the book is really a charge to inspire us to remain connected. And I found that really interesting in today's world, because we are, look, you and I are able to chat virtually. Even though we live in the same city, we're able to do this virtually. We're able to text whenever we need to. We're able to find each other on social media and send emails. And we live in a world where, you can't even go on vacation anymore without being connected, quote unquote. But the reality is, as the deeper that, you've dug into understanding connection and our challenge on how to be connected and evaluated today's world, Robin, like we are more disconnected than ever. We live in such a fragmented society. And I hate to say that. Like, listen, y'all, I'm a realistic optimist. Like, I believe great things can happen, but I also know that we live in this world where we think our connection is by friending someone on Facebook, and that's not an authentic, deep connection.
No.
And so I would love for us to, I'd love to get your thoughts on your takeaway as you were writing your book on what is our charge in this charge to be connected in such a disconnected world.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to send you a heart, Stephanie, or a thumbs up.
Robin's doing the little Taylor Swift heart sign right now.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but the whole thing
that's okay.
That's okay. But the whole thing about connection and disconnect, another way of talking about it is relationships. And there again, it's not that we've overused the word relationship, but this generation in particular wants to be connected. And that's the word they use more often than relationship. I use relationship still because I'm old school. But here again, what we're trying to do is build bridges. And the importance, I think, comes with, and you touched on it a little bit in terms of this nature of our culture, our world, or, the church. I mean, I think in large part, yes, you can blame it on media. You can put it on Hollywood, television, the schools. Do you think they're teaching, unless you're going to a parochial school or something, and yet, or a Christian school, and yet it's hard to find the faith being taught, let's just put it that way. And back in the days, again, the common wisdom, I guess, but it really wasn't that wise, said faith is not taught, it's caught. Well, that's
I like that.
That's catchy. That's kind of a cliche. But, I was taught by you how to do social media. Teaching is not bad. It's a discipline. And study, you talk about reading. That's an important discipline. Who reads these days besides you and me and others who are...
My kids and the hundreds of people that just bought your book, Robin, that took you to a #1 hot new release. But I know what you're saying.
The disconnect is one that is a real issue. And I think in large part, I can remember over the years, and maybe I'm talking too much, Stephanie, and stop me if I am, but people would come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm not a believer. Really, I don't have faith. Faith is just a crutch." And for the longest time I would smile and say, "Well, thank you very much," and I'd pardon myself and go into another room, leave the conversation. They knew I was a minister. Right. They knew I had a target on my head, and they just wanted to sort of just spill that on me. Which I did. I took it. I did not really come back. Now, with this new generation, I hear that. I don't strangle them. I'm very loving.
Well, that's good. Yes, you're very loving in the process.
But in a quiet, loving, straightforward way, I say, my faith it really is a crutch. But I'll tell you what, so is oxygen. And then I'll say something like, so is water. Water is really a crutch for me. And so is food. You get it, don't you, Stephanie?
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, basic element to my life. You take my food away, I die.
It's proof on connection, both connection with people, connection with something bigger, connection with, honestly, everything in life is so interwoven and it's so connected. And so I 100% what you're saying, I'm in agreement with. And I also think when I look at in regards to marketing and book marketing, I've wanted to coin this term authentic marketing. I've not seen it out there, but that is actually the essence of the type of book marketing and just marketer that I am, because it's built on connection. I'm a believer that connection matters. So just today, I was on my way home from taking my daughter to tutoring, and I had a work call, and my oldest son has issues with me being on the phone regularly. He thinks that he's like, why are you always talking to people? And I help him understand that's part of what I do. Like, I am a relationship marketer. Like, it is an essence of who I am. That's not a bad thing. But to him, he's like, well, like, you're just always on the phone. And I tried to help him understand that and I didn't use these same words because he's 10, but authentic marketing
Yes.
Authentic is built on real connection, and
Yes.
real connection will help you move your book through the process. But outside of looking at it from a marketing perspective for those authors listening, like just in life, relationship marketing, if you've not done any research on it, I highly recommend. I probably need to do an episode on relationship marketing. But it is, well, it's proof, Robin, when we were at your book launch and someone came and purchased multiple copies and he said, look, go do with these, right? Take these and run, do something. It's because of relationship marketing. Both you knew him, he believed in you and your message, but he also knew that there's power in spreading the word, and he wanted you to be empowered to take that and do it. So connection, you know, in a world where we're disconnected, I will tell you, in a world where we are really disconnected, when you focus on connecting with people, like looking them in the eye when you can see them in person, and that's even more important in a world where we still have masks, or when you do a little extra touch for somebody, you send a Christmas card, they will remember it. You know, when you do things that build a connection, and both, in a business way, but also, Robin, I believe, and we're going to pivot over to my second key takeaway here momentarily, but in a spiritual connection, one of my favorite things is when people tell me, oh my gosh, like, I just love being around you because you're so positive and you've got so many great things and you're just so happy. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And that's built on my faith, obviously, but I don't have to say it because it is built on this connection and they see it, right? Like it's that whole, it's caught. I believe that. So connection is pivotal. That was it was a beautiful reminder when I was reading your book on the power of connection, because I forget about it. But my second, and I feel like this is very connected to connection, is mentorship. Because when you connect with people, then you're given the opportunity to mentor them either formally or informally. And, sometimes that's literally like in a professional setting, you sit down and you're like, I need a mentor. You're my mentor. I'm the mentee. You're going to teach me these things. Others, I think of you and your sweet little grandchildren that I've gotten the chance to meet. You're mentoring them too. We're mentoring people we come around, and I'd love, I really think that the essence of your book is on mentorship, spiritual mentorship for sure. But I would love your take on this power that mentorship has, both on the person that is being the mentor as well as the person that's being mentored. I would love your thoughts.
Well, a mentor can have all kinds of different descriptions and characteristics to it, but I'm primarily talking about a spiritual mentor. Mm-hmm. I've had coaches. Many of us have had coaches before that have just been huge in our life in terms of the impact that they made, in terms of the formation of our character and who we are. I'll never forget a basketball coach I once had when I was, I think, in the 8th grade. Blew his whistle and he said, "Jennings, quit being a ball hog." We're playing basketball. Because I was always saying, pass it to me, I'll shoot, And it's that kind of, not intervention, but call that needs to be made that certainly a mentor can help with. Now, let me call you, Stephanie, on this one. You said people see you as so positive, so upbeat, so optimistic. I'm going to use the word hopeful. And then you're going to say, it's because of my faith, but I don't necessarily say that. Mm-hmm. Here, the mentor is able to articulate faith and say, let's discuss faith. You call faith a crutch. I call it oxygen. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then begin to talk about the importance of faith. And then I'll reflect on my experience, why it's important to me, but then quickly as a mentor, literally put the ball in the mentee's court and say, now talk to me about your faith. Now, again, it's sort of like the person that calls faith a crutch, the ones today that are all saying, I don't, how do they put it? They say, I believe, I'm not spiritual. I am spiritual. I'm not religious. If I've heard that once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Yep. Once again, Stephanie, I'm ready to grab them because what about me?
Right.
I'm spiritual and I am religious.
Yeah.
Now, here's the deal. Let's talk about your spirituality. I'll start where they are. I mean, as a mentor, I start where they are, and let's talk about what spirituality means to you, because it can mean a cloud up in the sky, not in a computer, but a mountain. I had a spiritual experience on a mountain.
Right.
Hey, that's great.
Right.
Tell me we're now in the Ohio Valley. and it's raining. Talk to me about your
Yes. For
spirituality.
those of y'all don't know, if you can't pick up on our accents, Robin and I are both based out of the Louisville, Kentucky area. So we are in the Ohio Valley, full of allergies and recent
That's
tornadoes. Yeah.
Right. Sadly. But
Yeah.
with that said, in all seriousness, where I'm going with this is the importance then of developing a spiritual vocabulary that religion literally means to tie together, to bind together.
Yeah.
Anyone can be spiritual, Stephanie. I've said this before. Al Capone was spiritual. Rick Pitino was spiritual. But, that's not always a good thing. Rick Pitino was our basketball coach, for those who are not listening. But there's all kinds of characters that would consider themselves powerful personalities, great charisma, spiritual in their own right and way.
Yep.
But tell me about that spirituality. Well, it's to compete. It's to win. It's to, beat the other guy. Let's talk about it. And then set it within the context of our faith, as in our religion. Do you know anything about forgiveness? Tell me about judgment. On and on we go.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kinds of discussions that you can have. But it's based in here. I don't hesitate to use the word because it's so important. But it needs to be claimed by a mentor, a spiritual mentor, and that's wisdom.
Yeah. So hold on. Let me talk about wisdom for a minute, because as you were chatting, I had this thought.
Yes.
Because I think that when many people think of mentorship, they think around wisdom, and typically that means that someone is wiser than you on a topic, right? So when you think about having a professional mentor or a business coach or whatever, or somebody that, I look at my past career, and my very first manager in my professional career was obviously a mentor. But you see it as someone wiser than you. That's usually someone older than you. But Robin, you've had the chance to meet my children, and I happen to believe my daughter, who is 8, she just turned 8 last weekend. I look to her as a spiritual mentor, truly. She doesn't even know it, but she imparts such wisdom on me. And so when you say wisdom, and I think you're exactly right, but I also want to challenge those listening, because obviously when you write a book, whether it is a Christian-based book, a leadership book, a memoir, anywhere in between, you have something to share. You have a wisdom that you are wanting to impart, typically, right? That's why you want to do it. You have something you want to make a difference in the life of another person. But I feel like we have the ability to realize that wisdom doesn't always equate with age. It just depends on the knowledge you bring to the table. And until you were just talking, I didn't have that epiphany, because I've always thought, okay, well, it's someone who is older than me, or someone who has been in the profession for 20 extra years, or it is my parents or my grandparents. And the reality is we all have the capacity to be a mentor to somebody else, just based on the beautiful gifts that you've been given. And if you use those gifts in the right way, then I actually, and again, this takes us to my third point. It's kind of like I planned this, Robin, which I did, but I didn't. But if you use your gifts in the right way, you're actually leveraging your calling and your vocation. And when you're doing that, then being a mentor to other people isn't something that you wake up and say, I'm going to be a mentor and I need a mentor. Instead, it becomes, in my opinion, just a part of who you are. And when I think of the work that I get to do with so many authors, I didn't wake up and go, I want to help people be empowered in their book marketing. The calling and the profession and the vocation found me, not the other way around. But I do get to be a mentor to other people, and it's so awesome. I think when you're doing it authentically, where it's built on connection, then it works and it feels right. And obviously, I feel like along the way, God's working in every moment. And I feel like that's a truly beautiful thing. So yeah, I look at you too, you have used a writing coach in the past. That's a mentor. When we work together, I get to help you. And on the flip side, this is the beautiful part, is I feel like you mentor me in the process. So we all get to play these roles, and there's value, I think, on both ends, both the one giving, because that's where you get to leave a legacy and you get to change lives. But as someone accepting, and I say that I selected that word accept very intentionally, because to be mentored, you really have to be open. right? Like for it to really work, you have to accept that someone has something and you're willing to hear it. And that is a challenge, I think, for, when we think of the context of your book in today's disconnected world. But I do think that's also a challenge for people who might be listening and go, oh, I don't know. Like, I know everything about my book's message. I don't know, but I'm going to figure this out. I know how to write it. Well, you might, but is your book going to be marketable? Or, you might know how to work social media, but do you know how to work it in a way that's you can leverage, right? Like this is where mentorship comes in all capacities. And I think, like I mentioned, I think what happens is when you connect everything you're doing and you leverage your calling and vocation, then the mentorship just flows. So let's talk a minute about your calling, your vocation, and, you're a prime example of someone who found their calling, went and leveraged their vocation, and didn't stop even after retirement. That's where these 3 beautiful books have come.
And that's where retirement has actually, I want to say, helped, because it's allowed me time now and the ability to use this time. And I don't want to say COVID as well, but it has kept me at least isolated in a way that I can write and read and study and all of those kinds of good things. But your use of the word empowered over and over and over again is so important. And yet here I invite you to also add to it the spiritual empowerment that comes with your work. And that to me is where, again, this book comes into play, because obviously you are a spiritual person and you bring that spirituality into your empowerment of others, and that's the spirit at work within you. So, all of this is part of being a spiritual mentor. That's where I want to see it, not just as a career mentor and a writer mentor, even though writers are listening to this, but the aspect of a spiritual mentor then offers spiritual knowledge. And that's what wisdom, again, you were asking about that. And the source of that, again, is always for us as Christians, Jesus. Go back to the Sermon on the Mount, go back to the conclusion of it where he talks about the little parable at the end with the man who builds a house on sand and a man who builds his house on rock. And those who listen to the word are building it on a solid foundation. And this is where, again, those who have ears to hear, which is what you were saying, being open to this. So all of this does come full speed, all circle, and all I'm trying to do is reinforce what you're talking about in terms of empowerment and spiritual empowerment that goes with mentors.
Absolutely. Well, and the reality is that you're right. We shouldn't compartmentalize the types of mentor we get to be. You're not just a spiritual mentor when you're in the church, encompassed by the church walls. You're not just a business mentor when you are sitting at your desk. You're not just a parent mentor, like a human mentor. I'm going to call myself now. I'm a human mentor, right? Like I'm teaching my children how to be good humans in the planet and with one another. Good. But that doesn't just happen when I'm feeling good, right? Like this is stuff that's happening all the time. And I really believe that's where, when we merge this calling, we realize that when you found your calling, like it's not something you can go, oh, this calling's great. I'm going to put it on a shelf and get to it in 20 years. Or this calling's so much fun. It's going to be a 9 to 5. Actually, I have conversations with my husband regularly who listens to the podcast. So he's going to have fun hearing this when it airs. But I share with him, he's like, oh gosh, Stephanie, like you work late nights sometimes. I'm like, I'm not working. This is not work. The stuff I do, like it is a passion, and obviously we could all leverage better balance, but this is not, when you do your calling, whatever that is, it's not work. Like it's not something that you just check in, check out of.
Let me just quick response to this, where you're going with this too is vocation is calling and it means to call, but also, here again, calling is such an important part of communication, and that's sort of where I again reinforce this understanding in my outline of James. A calling does bear witness. Again, back to when we were talking about faith, the importance of saying, it's because of my faith I do this or that. It's witness, and what witness for a Christian or what we're about is revealing the presence of Christ in our life. Okay, so you asked me about my calling. I struggled with that for years. I was waiting for the phone to ring.
Yeah.
Not really, but it's those kind of things.
Yeah.
Like, tell me what my calling is, please, Jesus. Well, here's the calling, Stephanie.
Yeah.
In one verse was follow me. Jesus said to follow me, called me to follow him. That's it. And that just, was a 180. All of a sudden, but that's the way it worked for me, and that's what I have to share with others. So when you follow me, when you follow him, you're living a life in Christ, and it took off from there. And you can,
you couldn't put that on a shelf. Like you couldn't not hear that again. Right. Yeah. Right. And I think, whether whoever's listening today, I bet you that there's like an idea kernel out there that you're thinking on. You've got a calling too. It might have a spiritual calling. It might be for a different purpose, but that calling, like there's a reason that you feel that. And that is a seed within you that you need to nurture. That's where mentorship can come in. That's where support can come in. That's where connection, authentic relationships can come in. The seed is there. You have to water it. And, leveraging a book could be your conduit to bring that calling to life. Maybe you have the book and it's time to take it to the next level. Like all of these things can help you bring that calling to fruition.
Yeah, and the calling is two-way. I mean, I talk to Jesus, I talk to God, I pray, I do all the things at my end. I'm thinking I'm a great guy, but do I listen to what God has to say to me? Do I hear Jesus talking to me through the Word? And these are the kinds of issues that go on with this dialogue. And not only that, the questions that then begin to surface. I sometimes play around in my own mind when if I get through the pearly gates. The question's going to be asked. I can see Jesus or Peter. Someone's going to say to me, "How's Mary? How's she doing? Did you guys have fun together?" And
for those who don't know, Mary is Robin's better half. No, I'm just saying that. Yeah,
that's like Jesus saying, "How's Corey?" It's this kind of intimate. Sure. Your closest friends. He's going to start with your not friends, but relationships, partner. Then build out. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your, not necessarily what do you have to show for yourself, but tell me about your life that you lived with me. Did we do it? We do a good job together. Are you, and then, you talk about James waiting for this crown, the encouragement that comes with heaven. And I call it the pearly gates. And I really mean this kingdom of God where the ongoing life with God continues forever. It's just very exciting.
It is exciting. And, launching a book is always exciting. Launching your book was crazy exciting. Robin and I worked together on launching his book. He had an amazing launch team. And through their collaboration, that book very quickly became an Amazon #1 hot new release in 4 categories. It got on the bestseller list. And I knew that the book had so much potential. Seeing that was just scratching the surface. But I truly believe, Robin, that like so many other amazing authors I get the chance to work with, when people begin to dive into your book, the real success comes when we start to see change and we start to see people being empowered. So, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the journey, but to also walk away and realize that the power of connection, the charge that I have to be a mentor myself and to inspire and empower other mentors, but to also live out this calling and don't just live it quietly, but shout it from the rooftop because it's a special gift, right? We all have that. And thank you for inspiring us. And thanks for being a part of the Empowered Author podcast today, Robin.
Stephanie, this was fun. Thank you. Call me anytime. I'm always available. This is the kind of conversation that I love to have. And again, I'll break down the word conversation has to do with conversion. When we have conversations, a little transformation, a little empowerment, a little change takes place. And you did it. Thank you for today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Robin. Robin's book is a beautiful book for both the longtime Christian and the budding one. I see it as a valuable tool for parents and children, for professionals and students, for young and old, and really the opportunity to impact any and all people. Now, while the book is focused on spiritual mentorship, there is so much goodness that you can get from it that it can really be used in all aspects of your life. So if you enjoy biblical guidance and Christian mentorship from an amazing Christian mentor himself, you're going to love Robin's latest book, A Letter to the Church and the Next Generation, Spiritual Growth Through the Witness of James. Now, I like to end these pop-up episodes sharing my favorite quote from the book, and this is one of my favorites. I had a lot of favorites, but this is one. Robin says in his book, "And this presents the need for spiritual mentors to bridge the gap between lost and found." Now, out of context, that quote doesn't acknowledge what presents, but it is the book and the message and everything that's shared within it. But what I really love is talking about bridging the gap between lost and found. Now, while Robin's book is undoubtedly a book written for Christians, I really see this quote through two different lenses. And I realize that every book has the power to be interwoven into all aspects of life. So there's this literal mention, this literal connection here that in the spiritual sense, finding a relationship with Jesus is going to help shift from being lost to found. And it's something that Robin really calls his readers to find and share. But I also love this reminder that in any type of mentorship, you can bridge that gap too between lost and found. So like my first boss, she helped me find a passion in my work. And my parents, they taught me how to become a person of integrity. My book coach showed me the way to navigate the book process. And I realize now that I get to be that bridge for others. And you do too, through your book, through your business, through your message, potentially through your faith and your life in general. It's kind of empowering, don't you think? I've had the chance to work with Robin on all three of his books, which we will link to in the show notes. And what a pleasure it has been, both to see these books achieve success, but also to see the impact that his books and his messages have on other people. From his book launches, social media engagement, business development, marketing tactics galore, working with our authors and authors like Robin are just something we love here at the Empower PR Group. We love it to the core. So, empowered friend, never stop being empowered, because empowered people empower people. Now, I've empowered you. Go pick up a book and empower yourself some more.